I want to take an opportunity to talk about this article that came out today because it sheds some light on how things work in Russia. I don't think a lot of people truly understand what it's like to be a Russian citizen, so let's get into it. So this article sheds light on the severe oppression of political activists and dissenters in Russia, particularly following the invasion of Ukraine. Now, Russia's government under Putin has aggressively cracked down on anyone who dares to challenge its agenda. It's silencing political opposition and human rights efforts, and this situation has been escalating since the war started, with numerous arrests and forced exiles and even suspicious unalivings of prominent political figures who oppose the government's actions. Now, this government's repression is nothing new, but the war in Ukraine has brought it to an entirely new level because activists, journalists, and ordinary citizens who spoke out against this war have found themselves basically being labeled as traitors and enemies of the state. And these individuals faced criminal charges, including terrorism-related accusations. And in some cases, the state has actually gone as far as seizing assets and freezing bank accounts of those who dared to criticize the government's war effort or domestic policies. So what's even more alarming is that this shift in Russia's political climate, where any form of protest or expression of dissent is very quickly crushed, right? Independent media outlets have been either shut down or forced to flee the country. Journalists have been silenced or pushed into exile. And the Kremlin has also moved to control the digital space. So they're now making sure that only pro-government narratives are spread through their social media and news outlets. And even citizens who peacefully protest are met with very harsh consequences, including very long prison sentences. For example, several activists, including some who were involved in organizing the anti-war protests against Russia going into Ukraine, have been now jailed under absurd charges. And Putin's administration has made it very clear that it will tolerate no opposition, no matter how peaceful, no matter how reasonable it is. And the state's actions have become even more extreme, with nonviolent protesters facing the same brutal treatment as those accused of more serious offenses. And one of the big things that this article focuses on is how it's not just jails that you can get thrown into, but you can get thrown into psychiatric wards. So if you're an activist, a journalist, or just a citizen that shows up to a protest and you show your unhappiness with the regime, they can basically put you in a psych ward so that you can get reconditioned to being more obedient to Putin. Now, this is where I want you guys to pay very, very close attention because this is literally what's going to be happening in the United States very, very soon. Because one of the most disturbing parts of this crackdown on your own citizens in Russia is actually the fact that the international communities of the world have very, very limited ability to influence change in their country, right? Many Western nations have, for example, imposed sanctions, but the Russian government remains largely unaffected by them, which only strengthens their resolve. And the global response is often very muted, very quiet, with leaders and organizations that are hesitating to take any sort of direct action because of Russia's global influence and military power. So in the face of this, many activists are obviously fleeing Russia to other countries where they can continue to do their work in a more relatively safe manner. But even when they're in exile, they're still facing the threat of retribution from the Russian government because some activists, for example, report being followed by agents even when they're living abroad. And the intensity of the repression actually speaks to the growing paranoia of Putin's regime as it seeks to eliminate any form of opposition. So in summary, the reason why I wanted to talk about this article is because I wanted people to understand what's about to happen to America. Because Russia's been this way for a long time, but unfortunately, now America's going down the exact same path. And I'm very, very scared that American people will not have too much of a chance to fight back because of tactics like this. So I'm going to say it again, but for the love of everything that you hold dear, America, fight back now. Fight back now because you will not have a chance to do it later on. This is your only window of opportunity. Do it now.